Hi, good morning, guten Morgen, wherever you're actually listening from. Thank you so much for tuning in for episode 2. I'm Kat, traveler, passionist, and your host of this podcast. Let me give you a quick throwback first of my favorite sense experience this week. So I had a really, hectic day. It was rather grey already and foggy, and everyone sort of seemed to be in a rush and complaining. And to be fair, so did I. And then I had a coffee latte, I muted my phone, and I literally did nothing else but enjoying this coffee. And I can tell you, that was really great. So I experienced the flavor of fresh cashew milk, the somehow smoky roasted coffee beans, and the really fluffy foam texture. And the greatest thing about it was actually that I just paused for a second and became aware of my senses. And I recognized how my mood improved immediately, and that I sort of, for myself, became the sunshine in the darkness on that day. But now, let's welcome and celebrate the guest for today. Sara is not only a close friend of mine, we also used to be roommates in New York City, and she's a pure source of inspiration. Most of my friends actually heard about her energy, her creativity, her kindness already, without even knowing her in person. She's one of the most creative and warm-hearted people I know. Growing up in California, she fulfilled her own dream of becoming an artist in the city that never sleeps. Today, she's a playwright, bartender, yoga teacher, and she became a true New Yorker. Sara, welcome to my Five Senses Experience podcast, and thank you so much for making this talk happen today.
Thank you, Kat. Wow. Thank you for that glowing introduction. It's great to be here. So good to see you and happy to be on your podcast.
Thank you. So I've already briefly introduced you, but maybe you just start by telling us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, what you're passionate about.
So I came to New York, like you said. I actually started as an actor and a writer, and I was studying at NYU and started getting more into writing, and my passion for acting kind of bled into it, and graduated as a playwright in 2018 and started picking up shifts at local bars to, support myself, and found a passion for that, not only creating cocktails and, the mixology of that, but
Right.
Also I'm passionate about like hosting and, creating events, creating a good time.
So, okay, let's talk about this one first. So the bartending, you are a bartender in Dream Baby, which is, by the way, one of the best places for drinks in East Village. And I enjoyed some of your creatures already. This podcast is about the five senses. So maybe let's talk about that one for a bit. So how do you apply your senses while mixing drinks?
So mixing drinks, the first thing if I'm creating a whole new cocktail is, of course, taste. And it's a little bit more scientific and like creating a potion or something is how it feels like. And you always want to create a balance. Like a really nice cocktail is really well balanced. So you think mathematically, okay, how much sweet am I putting in there? If I'm putting in like a sweet liqueur, like something like an elderflower liqueur or Aperol or something with a high sugar content, you really want to balance that with something with a high citrus content or a high bitter content so that you're keeping everything really well balanced and it comes out for a smooth, like clean cocktail. Using your taste buds to complement things that marry well together, like ginger and lime or lemon and honey. Those are really common ingredients that I mix together.
Is it something you learned from scratch? Is it something that you shaped over the time?
So I actually started bartending.
You started very young.
I started really young. I started when I was 19. And the first bartending gig I had was at more of a sports bar. And so it was kind of just like learning how to pour beers because it was, I think, 90% just pouring beers, which was great fun. And then I moved into the restaurant world. I was working for an Egyptian restaurant. And that was actually where I learned a lot of my mixology skills, because I was pairing wine with food and I was making specialty cocktails. I did a lot of self-study. I have some books here that I would read, the properties of each spirit, what spirit goes well with what kind of juices. And the restaurant was really cool because I had not only, our fresh juices and fruits to experiment with, but a full kitchen.
Oh, and right. So you could literally put the theory into practice.
I would. And I would really I got really crazy, sometimes we would make cocktails with tomatoes or cocktails with chili paste. And just on slower days, I was like, hey guys, I came up with something crazy. You want to come try this out? And we did have a lot of fun.
I bet. Yeah.
Good ones and some bad ones, A lot of it also is trial and error,
Right. So I know for any bartender, this is probably the hardest question, but is there one drink that you favor?
So my current favorite is it's called the Hanky Panky, and it's what's called a new classic. So the old classics are cocktails from the 1920s that all of us know, martinis, old fashions, that type of thing. New classics are a little bit more new agey from the end of the century, the beginning of this century, but now are really rising in popularity. And this one is the Hanky Panky is really nice because it comes back to what I was saying earlier about balance. It's got a really even balance of flavors. You start with a gin base and you mix it with even parts Fernet and sweet vermouth. And Fernet and sweet vermouth actually do have a very similar flavor profile, but sweet vermouth, as is kind of denoted in the name, is really, really sweet. And Fernet is really, really bitter. So you mix these equally with gin, and you get a really nice, well-balanced cocktail that features this flavor of the Italian herbal digestive.
Is this the one that you made for me a couple of weeks ago when I came visit?
Yeah.
It was so good. I remember.
I would just be playing around with it. And you either garnish it with an orange peel or a cherry. I prefer an orange peel because this comes into smell, actually. Garnishing with twists and citrus rinds. What I like to do is wipe the outside of the rind outside the glass. And so when you pick up the glass to drink,
you sort of smell it first?
Yeah, this orange oils that comes off of the peel. And then that introduces your experience of the cocktail.
Amazing. Now, besides being a bartender, what originally brought you to New York was playwriting. And you graduated from NYU and now actually work as a playwright, where, by the way, I became part of one of your projects. So tell us a little bit more about your previous as well as your current projects.
So yeah, like you said, you debuted your acting career in my play.
10 seconds.
That was a play. I've been working on that play a while. I started it my second year in college and kept sort of tinkering with it, developing it. It's this farcical, dreamlike comedy about sophomores at Columbia University that are dealing with confusion with their sexuality, confusion with racial relations within the group, and confusion with coming into themselves as they enter adulthood and at the age of 19. And there's lots of singing, there's lots of dancing, and you came on stage as we as part of fundraising to get money to put up the show. We had a big party and we raffled off these cameos in the show. And I was so thrilled that you won the raffle and came on stage to play a McDonald's worker.
So this was the big career.
Yeah. So that was a huge blast. My most recent project was an adaptation of Frankenstein that I developed along with several collaborators in the jail in New York City. So we would go into Manhattan Detention Complex and do theater workshops with the detainees there, working with the story of Frankenstein Mary Shelley's classic novel, this story of the man-made monster. And we would build up improvs and do writing exercises and acting exercises with the detainees there. And that ended in October. And I mean, that work was really powerful, really cool. I mean, to be able to take art and theater in a place that really doesn't get a lot of that, I was very humbled to be a part of that. That's, I think everybody should have access to the arts. And so it was cool to be able to go in and do something like that.
Totally. And I remember how excited you were about this project, truly passionate.
Oh my God. It felt really, really special, really important. I don't want to say important because, it's hard to talk about without, making it seem like it's about the artists, but really in practice, it's about the participants, and bringing it there and making space for them.
Right.
So yeah, that was really cool. We took a pause on that in October as our little troupe is all kind of we're all at different points in our career. And the project I'm working on right now is actually a play that it's a play, but it's also more of poetry and a lot of kind of stand-up comedy bits all mixed together in one text that I'm currently working with two of my collaborators that have acted in several of my plays and are also two of my dearest friends. And the three of us plan to perform a version of it, a short version in May, and then a longer version probably in late ssummer.
Oh, cool. In New York only?
Sorry?
In New York only, though?
Yeah, I mean, currently that's the plan.
Right.
We were really interested in kind of doing the opposite thing that we did with big productions like Dreamboat, which was all about, the big spectacle, all the dance numbers, all the props, all the lights. And there was this huge theatrical version of it, which was amazing and that I loved. But now we want to kind of focus in and think about, how can we build a text that we can perform anywhere that's really about the intimacy and the emotion, and it's a really small scale sort of thing. So We'll do lots of small performances.
Exciting. So talking about the intimacy and the emotions, what would you say, what role do the senses play in playwriting?
So the first one that seems the most important in my process is actually hearing, because what drew me to playwriting in contrast to other forms of writing is the dialogue, because dialogue is king in writing plays. It's all about what I am fascinated by is how people talk. I mean, you can hear even in just the way that you and I have been talking together, if you saw that written out, there would be so many stops and starts. There's so many little nuances that don't translate when you read a novel. Or even on film, the writing is so much more visual, where you create an image and then craft that image within the camera, where the theater, the personality and the character all comes from what we hear. And then the world kind of swirling around that is built using the other senses. Sight obviously comes in, of how we dress the characters, how we light them. Something very trendy in theater right now actually is also smell design, where you bring in elements of smell to really put you in the world of the play, even deeper.
I saw a play, and this has just started recently.
I think it's been around. It's been around for a couple decades, but it comes in and out of trendiness.
Right.
And I saw a play in Berlin where it was a long form play. So it was 3 sections and each section was 3 hours. So it was a whole 9 hours of theater. It was crazy. And it took place in a kitchen, and they were cooking real food on stage. So they were making the soup and this meatloaf and everything. And so as they made the food in real time, you would get the aromas of the soup, of the loaf, and all of these things, where you were in the kitchen with them. So stuff like that, I think any sense can be theatricalized, because the cool thing about theater is like you're right there and it's immediate, you know?
True, yeah. So you're not just a bartender playwright, you even more like literally you're probably the most creative and most diverse person that I know. And that's actually, so you live in New York. New York is super hectic, no doubt. And being a playwright during the day, bartender at night can be super fun, but yet also really exhausting, obviously. So to be more balanced, you turned your passion for yoga into training and became a certified yoga teacher last year. Right?
I did, yeah. This was it was at the transition point when I was going from the restaurant to Dream Baby, and kind of changing my career. I was just a year out of college. I was thinking, yeah, how can I find more balance? Like that's
right.
Like the big word I'm thinking on right now. With cocktails, it's about balance, and like in life in general as well. And
what's missing is the body balance, sort of that.
Body balance, exactly. I became a certified yoga teacher last year. I teach at Yoga to the People, which is an organization that offers donation-based yoga. We've got 5 locations in New York City. And we're currently opening one up in Queens, so there will soon be 6. And there are a couple locations out in the Bay Area. There's one in Arizona. They do like international workshops. It's this great organization, and it's really a treat to add that into kind of my lifestyle.
I love it. I remember the one day you and I went there together, and it was literally the most typical or the most classical New York experience you could have had. Like with everyone there, the room was absolutely packed, and like this energy was like so vivid.
It was crazy. That was a crazy packed yoga studio when you and I went together. It was unbelievable. We were like really like centimeters apart.
We were. So tell us a little bit more about your yoga experience, and then talking about the balance, maybe even about the senses. Did the practice that you had over time, and also with the coaching that you got to become a certified teacher, did this make you become more aware of your senses in general?
Definitely. I mean, I think it definitely heightened. Well, senses, we have, like, we talk about the 5 senses, which are very immediate and very like, we're always receiving information, and they're really heightened. But there's other senses that we have that are a little more subtle, like sense of temperature, sense of balance. And I've definitely become, and like sense of where your body is in space, like body perception. So I'd say like within my own body, the sense of balance and sense of body perception has just like gotten way more specific. And, just like being able to find more balance and where my body is, it makes like it feel like more ease of existence, like the more balanced I feel. It's kind of like always a place to, like a strong center can kind of keep me a little bit more level-headed as, crazy, hectic New York life, like worlds around me, late nights, early mornings, all of that, trying to keep like a sense of balance.
And to be like more present in the here and now, and, to experience a bit more actively, sort of like to become really more aware of your surrounding.
Yeah. And just being able to kind of like slow down the breath whenever things get a little hectic.
Right. Now that we've been talking, it's actually amazing how different our senses, if it's the 5 or even more that we could consider potentially, it's crazy how the different senses are applied differently according to your profession and allow you actually to experience all your senses in such different ways.
Right. Well, and there's so much crossover actually, because whenever I sharpen my sense of body awareness, that makes me better behind the bar, because if it's on a super late Friday night, and there's 200 people at the bar and I have, 4 drinks to make and 2 people to check out, I need to know exactly where I'm reaching to be able to grab the bottle, like not even think about it,
So pretty much blind, right? Like you just know exactly where everything's located.
Right. And being able to like have a sharper sense of where my body is and how the bar is stacked, that can make me move quicker in that career. And there's other ways, the crossover happens. Like when I sharpen my sense of hearing with playwriting, or when I work on dialogue, it actually makes me, that comes into bartending as well. It makes me more friendly. It makes me able to pick up social cues better.
Right. And be this really engaging bartender, motivating everyone to drink more.
Yes, exactly. But not too much,
Oh, for sure. Always under control.
But it's like, all right, let's get you a cab.
Exactly.
And another sense that comes to mind with the yoga, like on the teaching side, is touch. It's something that we do, or I love to do in my classes, is adjusting people and, pressing them deeper into poses, or realigning bodies and that sort of thing. Because I find like whenever a teacher does that to me, it feels really good. So I want to offer that if students would
want it.
Like,
right.
But doing that, my hands have gotten a lot more sensitive because I have to feel for where the breath is. And it also comes in not only touch, but sight and hearing, where if you're pressing somebody deeper into a pose, you can watch their breath and listen for their breath. And once the breath starts getting faster, it gets a little bit panicked or stuck, then to back off, give them like some more space, and then maybe go deeper after they readjust, their body gets warmer, press in deeper, like on the exhales.
This is so interesting because obviously I only know the perspective of taking your classes, but I never heard a yoga teacher experiencing the senses in yoga practice. That's so exciting. Yeah. And obviously it makes sense, but it's pretty impressive that over a rather short period of time, you're able to adapt and sort of improve and develop your senses so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, yoga is really like so much about awareness. So it's, I've gotten a lot of that, like heightened senses from that.
Right. All right. I feel like time's almost flying out. Do you have anything else that you want to share? Exactly. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think, I don't know. It's probably something intimately, is like how much the city itself is like an attack and a feast for all five senses always.
For sure. Like literally the moment you step out of your front door, you're overwhelmed by all the different perceptions, all the different senses that literally you just can't escape from.
It's wild. It's a city that I love and that like is home to me. But then
gosh, it's so nice. Yeah.
It's all about like finding ways to kind of like turn off from that,
Oh, for sure.
And yoga is one.
I was going to say it's crazy because you go out and obviously it's like probably one of the most busiest streets in the world. And then you go into a room somewhere doing some yoga and everything pauses, right? So you don't hear anything. It's literally like turning off the sound, turning off the whole energy, and suddenly you're in this like flow of like, floating and more of like being present, rather slow. It's like insane.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's my favorite city in the world. But it is certainly like a lot sense-wise.
For sure. Even if you're on the subway, like all the different musicians, all the different sounds, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why you and I love it so much.
Yeah. Well, and I think like because both of us share the tools, I love hearing you talk about, experiencing the latte and like just having the specificity in the mind to be able to decide to do that, and be
just sort of step back, right? Because usually we just, when we drink it, the latte is like, oh, I'm having a latte with cashew milk. And you're like, okay, well, but to actually focus on this is like the basic interaction with our environment, but we tend to forget it somehow.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's how true New Yorkers will survive, is like being able to do that, and just be like, okay, I'm in the subway, there's somebody playing an accordion right there, and there's a couple yelling at each other right next to, and this person's crying, and I'm just going to think about my latte. I'm just going to smell the beans. I'm just going to taste the foam. And
oh my gosh, this is so much New York.
Yeah.
Okay, my dear. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, time's up. It's been amazing having you here today. And it was, again, so inspiring and like empowering to actually hear and feel your energy, even though we're probably thousands of kilometers apart. It's been amazing. And I actually learned so much, especially about the way how you work. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, it's truly my pleasure. Like it's so good to just like chat with you and feel your energy. I love this project. And I can't wait to hear your next guests and keep following the Five Senses journey.
Thank you, Sara. And thank you so much for tuning in. You can subscribe on Spotify, Buzzsprout, and also on Apple and Google Podcast. Follow us on social media to be further inspired about the senses on whichever channel you prefer, if it is Twitter, if it's LinkedIn, if it's Instagram mainly. And focus on your five senses experience. Have a great day. Thank you.